So, does karma exist? Yes, it most certainly does. And I'm not going to try to explain it from the point of view that the Buddhists have, or the yogic point of view, or the Vedantic, because I can't. And also, this explanation is not in competition with any of those points of view. What I would like to explain is the basic natural law that gets called karma. This phenomenon is known in Kabbalah by the terms prayer and commandments. And they've got to do with two sides of a relationship in what we think of as the karmic interaction. One is on behalf of the force of nature, the principal law out of which everything evolves and evolves to fulfillment. And the other one is the response of the created being, or that part of it that is not yet aware of its connection to the whole. So prayer is the part that's connected to our part of the relationship, and commandments, or Torah and mitzvot, are the actions of the complete force that designed the whole system and is evolving it to a higher state of perfection. So the biggest misunderstanding about how this whole system works is that we tend to think of it as a justice system, a criminal justice system, in which actions that we do towards other people, even thoughts that we have, are balanced out by a heavenly court in which nobody gets away with anything and everything, always comes back no matter what you do. Now, it's not a criminal justice system, and it's not based on the good and bad that we think about. It's based on the good and bad according to the principle by which everything was created. There's no punishment involved in this system. The concept of karma, the popular one, says if you make somebody suffer, then you will suffer. But the system itself is much greater and much more loving than that very small conception of good and bad. Suffering is not a punishment. Suffering is a correction in the sense that it aims us better at the target. Like when you shoot a missile, it never goes straight and directly to that target without any deviation, without any mistake. It's constantly in mistake. It's constantly off the correct course. And the guidance system will tap it this way or that way, this way or that way, and it's constantly out of alignment with its correct course until it reaches its target. The same with us. Remember, this is in a matrix of love, and we're built according to our desires and the responses that we have in the sensations around our desires. So it always speaks to us that way, because that's the type of creature that we are. The sensations that we call suffering or inner pain, that's the currency of the relationship that we have with the upper force. It's not the external things that happen to us. It's that set of responses, of desires and frustrations about the desires, a sense of being lifted up and being in a positive space, or feeling shame. That's the matter out of which our development evolves. It's not to say that there aren't external sufferings, or at least there appear to be. But given the context of the intended goal, those are truly of no matter in the overall system. And in fact, if we respond correctly to the system, we don't experience those things externally at all. We experience all of the corrections internally. Okay, so let's talk about Torah and mitzvot, commandments, on the side of the upper force, on the side of the matrix, and prayer on the side of the created being. Now, prayer is completely misunderstood. Prayer is not something that we say. We don't get down on our knees and feign things that we wish were so just according to words. Prayer in Kabbalah is defined as a need, a deficiency, but a deficiency only in regards to what the upper force requires of us. Now, for most of our lives, until we come to a conscious connection with our correction or with the engagement with the matrix and the desire of the matrix, so to speak, and where it wants to lead us, we're totally unconscious of this. So we make all kinds of actions and we're getting all kinds of responses constantly because the needs that evolve in us are the thing that triggers the action. If we don't evolve our needs, then the action is repetitive, it's the same, and we don't grow, we don't change. The light is always in a standby mode and it's waiting for a correct type of a desire, a deficiency within us towards the thing that it wants to appear. Now, if a desire that has something to do with where it wants to take us appears, then it immediately responds by filling us with an awareness and lifting us up to a certain next level. And if unconsciously we have something that appears in us that's a desire that takes us away from the place that it wants to evolve us to consciously, like we start focusing on our own best interests against the interests of the people that surround us, then it's going to respond with sensations. Out of that currency of sensation, shame, joy, it'll be one of those things that it delivers to us in order to create a kind of a response, an emotional response in us that makes us search for the cause of the suffering. But we can't feign prayer. It's not something that you can manufacture. It's what appears in us according to our evolutionary experience. And it's always aiming at getting us to have a greater and greater sensation of what life is actually all about, where it's intending us to go. There's no other way to really speak about it. You can read a prayer book, you can do all those things, but that's not necessarily going to trigger the upper force to respond to us in a way that is going to fulfill and enlighten us. Now, from the side of the upper force, it reacts to us through a system called commandments. These 613, there's actually 620, commandments are all corrections, meaning given the desire that we have at the moment, if we have successfully navigated from the last one, there exists only one next step that can be taken, and that's the place that it wants to take us. Meaning it wants to correct the current desire to a place where it will have the reason, the sensation, the action, the intention of the next state. And that would mean a correction to the one that we're at. So this 613, 620 really means once we've done all this that it is a complete correction. It's not really about the number, though it's possible to do all kinds of number and gematria analysis of this. It adds up to a, if you can say add, it adds up to a quality of completeness, because in spirituality there is no such thing as part of anything. It is whole. So it's trying to correct. There are corresponding commands to all of the human desires that can be there. And it corrects each one of these desires from its self-focused state to its altruistically focused state. Now, in every one of these steps, there is a complete world and an entire play a whole movie with CGI and all that stuff that is there for us to feel within our emotional state everything that we need to. The fact is, though, that there's really nothing about this process that's self-focused or self-centered. It really is about correcting the world, because the whole world exists within us, and only for the purpose of raising us to be similar to the force. Not to be God, but to be similar in quality to that. And let me repeat again that this upper force is always there on standby, always waiting for our responses. And as soon as a desire appears in us that goes either towards the goal intended or away from the intended goal, there is an immediate reaction. So everything is very balanced and ripples out in a balanced way throughout the entire system, because our correction involves the entire system. And it's like a crystalline form. And we see all of that, and we see it as though it were a system of justice. But what you're seeing is a beautifully balanced, loving attitude towards us that evokes in us a perception that's like that. But nobody's being punished, and all sensations of shame or suffering are just the currency by which we begin to invest and feel and make real within us the guiding sensation behind all of life. So that accounts for all that instant karma stuff and the ideas that we have about justice and so on, karmic justice, which is really the way that it appears to us when we are unconscious of the system. But once a person starts to consciously engage with this, and they begin to see that, yes, they're in a certain state, and that this state, which once was a better state than the one they had before, is no longer good, because there is another desired state that's appearing as a deficit in the person. That is a correct request. The difference between my current state and the one that would be even better than that, according to the principles by which everything was created and by which everything comes to fulfillment, the need to experience that next state, that's a real prayer. And that, again, is responded to immediately by the upper force, because it's just waiting for us to have this demand. That's a correct demand. So how do you learn about such a thing? How do you become aware of it? Well, part of it is just a natural evolution, and part of it needs to be learned as a methodology, because there is so much in our perception of reality that obscures this from us. We're caught up in all of the intricacies of what appears to be outside of us, the physical things, the material things. They're so beautiful, they're so engaging, but there comes a point in a person's life where they're no longer captivated by it, and they know that there is another purpose. It's not that it's suddenly going to appear inside of you. That's the unconscious part of your evolution. The conscious part involves recognizing, first of all, that there is such a principle functioning within you, and that your desire is for something very different than what it used to be. And now one has to learn how the system's made, how you do it.